Hello. I am making this from my workspace in the office, or the room in the house that has become the office. So the update is it's now September 12th. We had our appointment with the doctor on August 10th. And I was very surprised to hear him say that I should continue doing a handful more IUIs. We were really prepared for Ola and myself just to go straight through and both do IVF. And then within the appointment, he said, okay, Ola, you continue to do IVF because that's always been sort of a part of the plan, that Ola does not want to become pregnant. And I would like to use one of her eggs. And so none of that really changed. And so we just kept on the path and got everything set up, though, and started all of the, like the initiation of the paperwork and kind of for her to redo blood work and just get on the calendar and all of those things that relate to IVF that I'm still not quite. I can't necessarily speak on it as much because I'm not the one going through it. I just know that it's starting, and she needs to start taking some birth control medicine about 3 days after her new cycle begins. So we're in all of that. We've already paid $12,000 for the initiation of that, and then we'll pay another like 12 or 13 or something for the medication. So I think that'll be it for that. We'll do some genetic testing as well on her eggs. And then, of course, like the freezing of them. And then later on, we'll have the transfers. So that's kind of that. And I was planning on doing the same thing and was ready for it. And then I was very surprised. And he said, if you'd like, you can keep doing some IUIs. Because he said, as far as we can tell, you don't really have a fertility issue per se, but that your fertility issue is exposure to sperm. You don't have exposure to sperm, which I think is a really delightful and hilarious way to describe the issue. It is accurate. So there's no sperm in my life that comes readily available and free and at the favorable handful of times throughout the cycle. So he said that if I were any person that you would typically see getting pregnant between 6 months and 12 months without any unknown fertility issues that are known. 6 to 12 months. And so I had done 2 improperly timed IUIs, which I don't really count, and then 4 properly timed IUIs. I was on 5 milligrams of letrozole throughout that period of time. And each time I made 1 egg, and the last time I had made 2 eggs. And none of those times did I think or have a late period or anything that indicated that at least there was an egg that was fertilized but not necessarily implanted. So I did the IUI on like day 14 and started bleeding on day like 28. So there wasn't any indication that I actually even had like a chemical pregnancy or anything. But he said, statistically speaking, that those, I guess, 5 eggs, yes, I don't know, maybe your eggs, like every single, like the statistics of how many of them are going to be good maybe start to dwindle at some point. But he said that that those 5 eggs just might not have been the ones for them to like be viable. And then he said, if you want to go for it, you can do IVF. It's definitely more efficient, but obviously more expensive. Whereas I think that there's a reasonable chance that you could become pregnant with a handful more eggs. And luckily, I had purchased 4 vials of the material of the sperm. even in preparation for IVF, they said get 2, so I bought 4. But he said, if you'd like to use some of those, use them for IUI, and we'll keep 1. We'll test it, make sure it works. And then we can refreeze that 1. So we can just use 1 for IVF, for Ola's eggs, and then we could freeze it and then use it for my eggs. He also mentioned that I guess some new methods is that instead of dropping a lot of sperm in the petri dish or whatever for the fertilization, they just take 1 single sperm. So out of the millions that they'll use for however many eggs of Ola's that are going to get fertilized, there would be millions left over potentially so that they could freeze it again. So that's to say that then he said, okay, you have 1 separated for IVF. You can use 2 comfortably of those vials, or 3 of the 4 that you have for IUI, or potentially you could just get another vial of sperm. But they've been quite scarce from the donor that we've chosen. We've gone through. This is our 3rd donor. I'll maybe make another video of what kind of happened over the past year, basically, in the kind of IUIs that I had before. Anyway, so we're on the 3rd donor now, and we have those 4 vials, potentially get a 5th. Anyway, he said, do IUI. I said, okay, I would do 3. Ola's saying maybe just do 2, but I sort of think let's do 3. The other option is that, or the other feature now is that I'm going to take 7.5 milligrams of letrozole. So potentially in that, more eggs would be, more follicles would get created. So instead of only having 1 or 2 chances, if you get 1 or 2 eggs, that there would be, maybe 3 eggs that, or 3 follicles that would develop. And we had to talk about multiples and the risk of multiple fertilization, at which point we discussed selective reduction for multiple fetuses, which is a very fancy medical term for evacuation of fetuses, which is another fancy term for having an abortion, a kind of a medical abortion at that time. If we did let it go with 3 follicles and they each 3 became fertilized, what's sort of the plan? And we talked about selective reduction as an option to kind of minimize ultimately the risk, or the risk involved, and then just the number of fetuses that would grow to full term. He said that 3, we would go ahead and do it without a question. 4, we would have to talk about it. And 4 or more, we would cancel the IUI. So that's where we are now. I just had my first day of my menstrual cycle a handful of days ago. So I've started on the 7.5 bits of letrozole, and we'll see how many follicles are created. If I only make 1 follicle, we might skip it. 2, we might go ahead with it, and 3, absolutely. 4, we'll even with how the doctor says, we have to kind of think about it. But I feel more positively in a way about if I create more eggs, then that's kind of just more, or follicles, that's more chances. So even if I only do 2 or 3 IUIs, but within that period of time, I create 6 or even 9 eggs, statistically speaking, that's a much higher chance of becoming pregnant through IUI. If I don't get pregnant through IUI, within the next 2 or 3 cycles, I will do IVF as well. And that's sort of, that's the latest. That's the latest.